So most people talk about leadership when things are easy, titles, growth, metrics, but real leadership shows up when there's risk. When speaking up costs you something, when doing the right thing doesn't pay immediately. Today's guest spent decades studying and living that reality. John Graham is co-founder of the Giraffe Project, an initiative that spent over 40 years highlighting everyday people who stick their necks out to solve real problems. He's also built a massive following with the Badass Granddad series, blending humor, wisdom, and hard truths about how people actually behave under pressure. At one point, ended up on the U.S. no-fly list because of the work he was doing. So hopefully we'll hear some of awesome stories like that. This one's going to be a little bit different and more relevant in the world of cybersecurity. So John, welcome. I've been looking forward to this one.
Well, I'm looking forward to it too, Hani. I'm really looking forward to it. I love the way that you wove risk into leadership because I think you're absolutely right.
You've seen more real world leadership and risk than most people ever will in an entire lifetime. So we'll start simple. Can you let the audience know how the Giraffe Project even come to life?
Sure. And first of all, the first thing I got to say is that I didn't start it. I'm not smart enough or creative enough. The Giraffe Heroes Project was started by my wife, Ann Medlock, way back in 1982. And she was a single mother in New York City. And she was fed up with all the negative news. And she knew there were good people doing good things, brave people taking on tough problems. But nobody was telling their stories, not the New York Times, nobody. So she decided she would start her own news service honoring heroes, telling their stories, because she knew that storytelling for millennia, for century, for I don't know, a long time, since the Neanderthals perhaps, storytelling has been the major way that cultures have gotten people to act bravely. Preaching at them to do so doesn't seem to work very well, but telling stories, giving examples did, and understood that. So she decided to become sort of the troubadour for our times. And she started by finding people who were sticking their necks out. Of course, they were men and women, every color in the rainbow, working on all kinds of issues, whether it was poverty or corruption or women's rights or global warming or whatever. She started finding these people and getting their stories told. 1982, of course, it was fax machines and paper press releases. And then, vinyl disc. I don't know, some of your listeners, viewers may not even know what a vinyl disc is. It's called a record, goes round and round on a turntable and sound comes out. And she would send these discs. She'd get a movie star or a stage star, this was after all New York City, to do the voiceover, and she would send these things out to radio stations and they would play them. And it caught on immediately. And within a few years, there was a nice feature on her in the New York Times, and she was up and running. Very soon on, I joined her. I was a little bit skeptical that storytelling, because I was by then a pretty well-known platform speaker, and I just thought that giving wonderful speeches would be, that's the way you change the world. No, I wasn't getting anywhere, but Anne was by telling stories. But then I fell madly in love with her, and we got married. And we've been partners in the Giraffe Heroes Project, husband and wife ever since, so like 44 years. But that's the short form of how it started. I didn't start it, but Ann and I have been working together on it, and we're still doing the same thing in 2026 that Ann started 44 years ago. We find
And
people
and
telling
I mean that makes sense, John. It's a beautiful story. I get like, what made you and Ann decide this is worth the effort? The juice is worth the squeeze. We're going to spend the next, I don't know how many decades really here. What is it that really kind of prompted that?
Well, I mean, you're a businessman. You understand me when I say because it works, because it works. Storytelling is an enormously powerful way of getting people to do brave things, whether or not it's someone wondering whether to blow the whistle on a corrupt practice in the government agency where they work, or a company where they work, or where it's someone, let's say in your business, someone who spots something going sideways with an AI venture in their company that they don't like. Well, it takes some guts to speak up at a board meeting and say, "Hey, wait," but that example is what gets other people. Preaching at them just doesn't work. I mean, it doesn't work very well anyway. But telling stories does.
Yeah, and that resonates. Like you've built a movement entirely around kind of getting people to do things versus just talk about it, right? Is a big difference.
We also, I must add, that in 44 years, we've done lots of other stuff. We've created a schools curriculum helping young people build lives as courageous, compassionate citizens. We've, of course, no longer use records, but we use the latest in social media. We've now found over 2,000 of these so-called giraffe heroes and told their stories all over the world. Feedback is enormously successful. We know we've motivated a whole lot of people who were sitting on their couch to get up from that couch and say, what the hell? Why am I just mouthing off about this problem and complaining? I better do something, because here I just heard the story of a woman or a man who's sticking his or her neck out, and I'm doing nothing. That's not right. I'm going to do something too. And that's what happens. It doesn't always
Yep.
happen. But that's the major motivator. It's the same thing that motivated the troubadours or those Neanderthals dancing around their campfire trying to get their culture to act more bravely. It's an ancient strategy, but boy, does it work.
Speaks to the fact that everybody thinks they're the hero in their own movie. So, and with Badass Granddad, where did that come from? Because that's not a typical career pivot. So tell me a bit about that.
No, no, I've had a lot of careers, including 15 years in the U.S. Foreign Service. But yeah, the name came from a grandchild. He's a journalist in New York State, and he had written a nice magazine article on mountain climbing. I've done a lot of mountain climbing, including some fairly famous climbs. And he was writing an article featuring some of the stuff that I had done. And the last paragraph of the article says, I didn't really understand this, but my granddad is a real badass.
Yeah.
So I said to myself, that's exactly what I need, because I'm 83 years old and I want to reach a younger demographic, which means short forms, very short forms, and lots of snappy memes. And badass granddad is perfect.
Yeah.
Andrew, my grandson, gave me the name. I started working on it with a couple people that know how to produce these things, and we've pretty much perfected the art of creating these 3-minute videos. You can find them by going to the search boxes on either TikTok, Instagram, or YouTube. The first 2 minutes is one of my crazy ass adventure stories, and believe me, I could hold your audience here for a day and a half with my adventure stories. It's crazy. I'm lucky to be alive. Anyway, I start off with 2 minutes of one of my adventure stories, and then the last minute I segue into some kind of life lesson related to that story, like the need to persevere, the need to find courage when you're scared, all the things that you need for successful to be a successful change agent. And I weave it all together. But by then, having told the adventure story, I've got people's attention. And it's really been amazingly successful. I had no idea what would happen. But I've now got, as of this morning, about 120,000 followers, which I'm told is pretty good. And not only that, but I've got people chasing after me to put ads on my badass granddad. I'm never going to do that, of course.
That's
But
good to hear. Awesome.
apparently, I mean, this makes me laugh. I'm now what's the right word? A senior or a major influencer? I don't know. I don't follow
Oh,
people.
really? One of the top buckets, basically. Right?
Yeah, one of the top buckets as an influencer. Here, I thought influencers were young ladies teaching you how to put nail polish on, and
Yeah.
I'm one of them. I love it.
Right.
So I do 2 or 3 of them a week, and you can use any of these channels. I urge your viewers to spend 3 minutes looking at one or maybe a couple of them, and you'll see what I mean. So that's what Badass Granddad started. But
But like with that amount of followers, I mean, you definitely get like great feedback. Like I'm sure you see all sorts of comments and all sorts of like needs and people inspired by different things. I mean, what's the one thing people that you're seeing think they would do in a tough moment, but they usually don't do?
it's interesting, Hani. The comment section what came as a complete surprise. I was dealing with people less than half my age for the most part. And I thought I would get a lot of snark. I mean, after all, that's what 20 somethings do, right? Lots of snark. No, I didn't. I got almost no negatives. And I've gotten 2.5 million viewers so far. And the comments, and I get dozens of comments, not dozens, hundreds of comments, maybe thousands by now.
Yeah.
And they're mostly positive. And of the positive ones, most of them are not just way to go or love it. They're, to answer your question, they're honest searchings. They're real questions by people looking for answers. And the key thing, and I'm going to zero in on your question now, the key thing is, where do I find the courage? Where do I find the courage? You've just told the story of this adventure or something, and just don't have that courage, and so what I've done is, I mean, I realize that this is because the questions and comments are so real, they're not snark. I spend 4 or 5 hours a week answering my fan mail, trying to put in 2 or 3 sentences something that might be helpful. For example, there's a problem at work. It might be a corrupt practice or an inefficient practice, and they're junior and they're afraid to say anything. Or maybe they're not junior and it's their time to speak up at a board meeting because what the company's about to do, they think is either stupid or wrong, and they're afraid to do anything. So I take them back to, what's worth doing? What's meaningful in your life? What creates passion in your life? It probably isn't third quarter earnings. It probably isn't. It probably isn't even money or power. Now, what creates real meaning in most of our lives is some kind of giving back, some kind of, when you look in the mirror in the morning, what looks back at you, you want to know makes a difference, that you're here on the planet for a difference. And damn it, that difference probably isn't the next $1 billion you make. It's something deeper than that. It's giving back. It's some kind of service. And you'll find that true. I'm not saying to anyone they should become Mother Teresa or put on sackcloth and ashes. You can be of tremendous service in the business world, making a good product and selling it for a fair price under fair labor conditions, good environmental conditions, good neighbor in your community. That's a service. I just want to get people thinking that way. And I tell people that, and they seem to appreciate that. Just knowing
Yep.
that they can do it, just knowing that they can do it, that other people, thousands of people, have made that choice before them, and they can do it too.
Yep. Yeah, yeah, that really resonates. I mean, look, we're hearing a lot, especially now out there, about growth, and a lot of times, there's a school of thought that means it needs to be at the cost of other things. And I
Yes.
agree with you. You can have it all and not basically scorched earth while still doing okay for yourself. But yeah, and it look, in my world, in Agentics, it's cybersecurity, enterprise leadership. People are constantly making decisions under pressure, risk, compliance, politics, revenue. People tend to know the right move, but they still don't take it. So my question to you is why? Why do people freeze when it matters most?
I think because they're not looking deep enough into themselves. I find that there are a lot of people that are just focused on advancing their career or advancing their pocketbook or whatever, or advancing their government agencies thing with your member of the Trump administration. A lot of it is that they just haven't thought deeply enough about why they're being motivated, and they hit an obstacle. The obstacle is like a mountain; it's a mountain face in front of them, and oh my God, I can't get over that. What I'm finding is that if you can get people to focus on what's meaningful in their lives, and by meaningful I mean attached to their deepest passion, and that takes time, and that takes effort, and that takes guts to find that real meaning, because that real meaning may lead you in directions that you may have thought were crazy beforehand. But what I'm finding is that the real meaning in life comes from some kind of giving back. And if you don't understand that, then you're faced with these mountains. But I've watched people, thousands of people, who are doing what you might say are really brave things. And they do it because they're passionate about what they're doing. They're passionate about exposing that bit of corruption. They're passionate about making their product even better. They're passionate about doing good in the world. And when you're passionate about something, when it means that much to something, the mountain become speed bumps. I'm
Yep.
exaggerating, but I mean, what I find
No, but I get it.
is that
Yeah.
when you're in that condition, when you're operating in that condition, what would have been a major obstacle becomes something more like a speed bump, and you go around it or you go over it or whatever, and you look back and say, what speed bump, and you keep on moving. Working with a real sense of purpose attached to what really makes you passionate about life is an incredible motivator. And it's way more powerful than adventure was for me. For example, as a young man, the next adrenaline rush was my source of meaning, and that turned out to be pretty shallow.
Yeah.
I've got lots of friends now who are totally fixated on money or power I mean, I read an interview. I don't know whether it was with Mr. Hegseth or someone like that, who was saying, "Oh, what's important is to be tough and to bash people, and that, if you don't do that, you're a wuss." And I thought, "Oh, you man, you're like a child. That's like an 8-year-old saying that." Uh, no, that's not where meaning comes from.
Yeah, and look, like it's like nature versus nurture kind of discussion again. Like, can courage be learned, right? Or is it who you are?
I think both. I think intrinsically that we are born that way, and it can easily get squelched. Can easily get squelched, primarily for lack of role models. And this is where I spend a lot of time with young men. Because I think there is a real lack of role models these days. I don't know if you'd agree or not, but the only thing that's believable to a 15-year-old, especially a 15-year-old male, is a role model. They're not going to just take their parents saying, da, 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 do this, do this, do this. Come on, we've all been 15 years old. We know what that's
Yeah,
about. But role models are what's important. That was important to me. When I was just 16 years old, for example, I went to sea on a freighter. This is before container ships. And I came out of a community, Tacoma, Washington, where nothing ever happened, in a wonderful family where nothing ever happened. And I was horribly bullied and looking for models and role models, but I couldn't go to my own father. He was a nice guy and I loved him, but he was a very soft guy. He was constantly being rolled over by other men, more aggressive men at work. And so I go on this freighter, and immediately I see that it's run by 50 or 60 really tough guys with muscles and tattoos, and they're really something. There's something like I've never seen before. I mean, the very first night out at sea, if I could tell the story for a minute,
yeah,
I'm out on the
please.
deck. And one of these seamen comes up to me and he starts making, sexual advances. And another seaman, a big black guy from the engine room named Roy, he must have weighed 250, 60 pounds. He grabs this first guy, slams him up against the bulkhead, beats the shit out of him, and then streams out of Roy's mouth the most magnificent I'd ever heard in my life. I just sat there with my eyes open. I'd never seen physical violence. I'd never heard cussing like that. I went back
Yeah,
down to my cabin and I practiced cussing like Roy, and I practiced slamming an imaginary foe up against the wall because now I understood what meaning in life was. It was being a violent male, and
yeah,
I didn't get over that for 10 years. I mean, in the next 10 years of my life, we're taking one wild ass risk after the other. I mean, 2 years later, I was hitchhiking through the Algerian Revolution. The year after that, making the first ascent of the most dangerous mountain climb in North America, maybe in the world. The year after that, hitchhiking around the world. 15 years after that, in the Foreign Service, jungles, deserts, car bombs, wars. I mean, I loved it, and I was really good at it.
yeah.
So that's where I found my meaning until I didn't. I was in the middle. I won't go into the stories, but man, it was a battle in Vietnam that really taught me a lesson about how shallow my life had become, that there was no
Yeah.
compassion, no sense of meaning. The purposes of my life were all too shallow, and I was going down this awful hole. I pulled myself out of that hole, and Giraffe Project soon, and Ann Medlock soon came into my life, and everything changed.
Mentality is big, and sourcing that comes from passion. Courage isn't big heroic moment at the end of the day. It's a series of small decisions where you're not backing down, where you keep forging. It might not be the right path, and you have to course correct often, but it's more of a bunch of small decisions versus one big moment.
And this is something also that I urge people to start with if they're really confused about this, is start small. Don't say, I'm going to go out there and stick my neck out and get rid of this awful politician, or I'm going to solve climate change by myself by collaring all these CEOs of fossil fuel companies. Start small. Start in your own community, start in your own family. Start with your out of control 13-year-old, for example, where it takes real guts to do what you need to do to give him the proper guide, him or her the proper guidance. Or in the community. I mean, let's say someone that's out there doing something you don't like. Maybe you don't like books being banned, for example. Don't just complain about it. Go to a school board meeting, raise your hand and say, hey, I don't agree with banning books in the school, and say why, and try and get other people to see your point of view. And you start where you can start. As my wife Ann famously says, you lift up the corner of the rug where you can lift up. And I guess that's to your point. You start small, and you start with these small things all over you, and you gain confidence. And then at a certain point, you can tackle bigger things.
Yeah.
It may be in your company. The small thing is just to create better relationships with your coworkers, and then when you feel more comfortable doing that, even to the point of sometimes making some career suggestions or other more sensitive subjects at work, then maybe you might find the courage to actually take on a company policy that you think is wrong or stupid. But you don't want to start there by barging into the board meeting and saying you guys are full of shit. No, that doesn't work very
Yeah.
well.
Back to your following, right? You chose and you talked a little bit about like not having ads there. I mean, you're choosing not to monetize that in a traditional way, which is very opposite from what everybody's doing. So, what did you see that made you say we're not going to go down that path?
Well, that's not a hard question to answer because I have no control over the ads. I don't want to spend all of this time and all of my own passion and all of my own energy and then have someone for 3 minutes try to sell a brassiere or a motor car. I mean,
So protecting your integrity, and I really appreciate that. So commendable. And for founders trying to grow companies, early stage, where's the line between growth and selling out?
I think one thing that's important is to understand that you don't never have to sell out. If you're smart and you're tough and you spend enough time looking at what's really important to you, what creates the passion in your life, where your vision's coming from, and then you resolve that you're going to do stuff that follows that path and not other paths, that gives you an enormous amount of confidence to not take a lower path where, okay, I'll do this for a year. Yeah, I know the product isn't fully developed yet, or I know we should get rid of that asshole, and we're not, no one's afraid to do, everyone's afraid to do that, or whatever. Yeah, you don't have to go there. You can have it all. I mean, so the choices, I don't see it as a choice. I see people that say it's a choice, they haven't explored deeply enough. Because what I have also seen, and I'm sure you've seen this too, or you wouldn't have started this podcast, there's an awful lot of people in the business world who are smart and compassionate and tough, and they have a heart, and they have a bigger perspective on life, and they honor community, and they're good husbands and fathers. And yes, they're making money. God bless them. I hope they make a lot of money. I have nothing
Yeah.
against the profit motive. I'm just saying that those people that say I have to swing low, or I have to focus entirely on power and violence in order to get ahead. And if I don't do that, I'm a wuss, and other males are going to just laugh at me. Yeah, no, they won't. Other males.
Well, speaking of doing something, what did you do, John, to get you on the no fly list of the US? We got to get back over there. I'd love to hear
Oh God.
story. That's not a normal resume bullet. So,
Yeah. Well, after 9/11, of course, there was a whole set uh, of new laws in the United States about protecting our national security, and we all know that. And they were all passed in a hurry, so some of them weren't that well thought through. Anyway, a few years after that, we're talking 2005, 2000. Well, George Bush was president for sure, and I was then deeply involved in peace negotiations in the Middle East. I was a diplomat, and so I had a lot of contacts. And I was, in fact, played a very, very tiny part in the Oslo Accords in the beginning part of this millennium. And anyway, so I knew the Israeli side of the struggle pretty well, but what I didn't understand was the Palestinian side because there wasn't a lot of information on that. So I decided to see for myself. So I go over and I end up in a refugee camp in South Lebanon that's run by Hamas. Hamas, of course, the people who famously killed those 2,000 Israelis and 1,500 Israelis and are the source of a source of the trouble in Palestine. But at the same time, Hamas also ran hospitals and schools. They were the social welfare structure of a whole lot of Gaza and the West Bank, Gaza in particular. So I went over to talk to them, and they, boy, talking to the Palestinians sure filled me up to here with their anger over what had happened beginning in 1948 when their grandparents were kicked off their land and ended up in camps or in Gaza or in the West Bank or whatever they were shoved around. And these people never forgot, and their anger was palpable. Okay, so I got an earful for a day of the Palestinian side of the story, some of which I had not heard before.
Yeah.
I come out of that camp and I end up flying back home, and I go to the airport in Paris to take the connecting flight back to Seattle, and I'm stopped by the French secret police, the Sûreté, and they take me to a small windowless room in the bottom of the airport, and they grill me mercilessly because, of course, there were people following me everywhere, and they knew where I had been, and they wanted to know what I was doing with Hamas. Didn't I know they were a terrorist organization, et cetera, et cetera? To my benefit, they let me loose. So I think, okay, well, that was tough, but I got on the plane and back home in Tacoma, Seattle. 2 weeks later, I'm flying down to see my grandchildren in Oakland, two little girls, and I'm stopped at the Seattle Tacoma airport, and a guy with a badge hands me a letter. And I open it, and it says that I have just been determined to be a threat to civil aviation and a threat to national security, and I'm now on the federal no-fly list. Aha. They wouldn't tell me who put me on the list. They wouldn't tell me what the charges were. I say, look, take me down to the FBI office in Seattle. I'll plead my case, or arrest me so I can go to court. I mean, this is crazy. First of all, there wasn't just that visit. I'd also just finished publishing a book called Stick Your Neck Out, which is all about citizen engagement, which has stuff in it like how to organize street demonstrations and stuff. I mean, I'm no patsy. And so I had written that book. And not only that, but I was leader of the Giraffe Heroes Project. And the Giraffe Project, for anyone that cared to look at it, was not exactly a warm, fuzzy organization honoring people doing bad things. It was honoring people doing good things and taking risks to do so. So any one of those three things could have got me on the no-fly list. To my
Yeah.
amazement, they let me go down to Oakland and back. But
It's
they
funny. And
hassled me for 10 years after that, until about 2015, when the no-fly list became kind of a joke. I think there was a 2-year-old baby put on it, and some movie stars get put on it. I mean, it became kind of a joke. But
yeah.
it wasn't a joke for a while, and I was constantly hauled off into a special line and grilled, sometimes almost missing the flight, but never quite. But the story I like to tell most was I'm heading to London to give a speech, and I go to the British Airways counter in the Seattle airport, and sure enough, I know this is going to happen. It always happens. The counter person looks up my entry, and she says she sees an asterisk by my name, and I know what that asterisk is. But instead of looking worried, she laughs. I see. Well, you're no friend of George Bush, are you? She says, "Look, here's what I'm going to do," she says. I'm going to put you on first class. And then she gives the British equivalent of the American fuck you symbol, which is this.
Yeah.
And she says, George Bush. So I fly first class to London courtesy of British Airways. So the no
That's
fly,
awesome.
as far as I know, I'm still on the no fly list.
Yeah. Well, it was worth it in the end, probably just for that one business flight. What, 13 hours on that thing?
Oh, God, yes.
Well, like John, what did that experience teach you about systems and power and speaking up?
Well, systems and power are powerful. There's no question about it. All you have to do is read the newspaper. All these people put into jail or sent to Guatemala or whatever. I'm not talking about immigrants that might be criminals, but the great majority of the deportees are not criminals. They just came across the border and without a visa. And a lot of other people, or there's two people that just got killed in Minneapolis, for God's sake. One of them is a woman shot in the face and her last words were smiling at her executioner. And then there's the male nurse who's shot 10 times in the back. I mean, yeah, the current administration is, in my view, I don't know what your audience is. In my view, is that there are a lot of real thugs involved, and thank God that the courts are beginning to clamp down on some of their excesses. But yes, taking risk means taking risks. And we honor people in the Giraffe Heroes Project, not just for doing the right thing, we honor them for doing the right thing, but taking risks to do so. I mean, taking a risk means taking risks. And sometimes giraffe heroes are killed. Sometimes, a lot of times, they're fired. Whistleblowers, for example. A lot of times, they are beat up or thrown in jail. So, yeah, I mean, just doing the right thing, as you well know, I mean, you're an experienced business person. Just doing the right thing doesn't protect you. There's always risk. I'm turning
Yeah.
that
And I mean,
ball.
did you ever think like it isn't worth it anymore? Like this
Oh
is,
no, no!
yeah.
It's always worth it. I mean, I can't tell you some of the quote fan mail that I get about thanks to you, thanks to your speech, thanks to Badass Granddad, thanks to the Giraffe Project, I actually did overturn a company policy. I actually did something that saved hundreds of lives. I actually did something that saved my marriage, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And it just, I get a steady stream of stuff like that. I mean, people say, when are you going to retire? I say, retire from what? Why should I retire? I'm having too much fun, and as far as I can see, I'm doing too much good in the world, and so I'm going to keep
Yeah,
doing it until I drop dead. I mean,
I love
wow,
it. I love it. It
I
keeps you
never,
going. I mean, most people are not going to face something that extreme, but they will face moments where it's easier to stay quiet. And perspective is super important for those moments.
now, like I said 5 minutes ago, start small. I'm not expecting you to be, no one expects you to be a superhero right off the bat. It's assembling courage and most of all, finding the meaning that creates that courage can take years. It took years for me. I came back from Vietnam totally broken because how shallow my life had become. Here I was in Vietnam, not because I believed in the war. I knew the war was lost. I knew the war was stupid and wrong. I only went over there for the adrenaline rush because I'd never been in a shooting war before. And I told the State Department to send me to the most dangerous assignment they had, and they did. I was the advisor to the mayor of the city of Hue in the northern part of what was then South Vietnam. I was in constant danger. I come
Wow.
back, and I'm there for what history calls the Easter Offensive, when the North Vietnamese almost ran over all of Vietnam, but not quite. But I was trapped in the city with three North Vietnamese divisions surrounding the city, and there was no American soldiers nearby because the Nixon-Kissinger agreement had withdrawn troops from that part of Vietnam. So I and a couple other civilians, I never wore the uniform. I and a couple other civilians were trapped in the city, and our fate depended upon the battle going on. Long story short, I won't tell you all of it, but basically, I don't get killed. I get out of there, come back to California, and a healthy case of conventional, what we now call PTSD. I mean, I'd walk on the shadow sides of the street in Palo Alto to avoid sniper fire. But the biggest point
Yeah.
was not PTSD, not conventional PTSD, but the fact that I had realized how shallow my life was. I was over there almost 30 years old, making life and death decisions for a war I never believed in, for a war I knew that was wrong. I did it entirely because of my own shallowness, my own passion for adventure, and my own unwillingness to look at the side of me that was compassionate, that should have known better. So I had to crawl
Yeah.
out of that hole, and that took a long time. So you ask, how long does it take? Well, for me, it took years, 3 steps up, 2 steps back. But the key thing was finding out who I was. And I did a lot of stuff. I never went to psychotherapy, but in California, I went to what they then called encounter groups, places where you sit down with 15 other people and sort of spill your guts, hope that you'll get some responses that may help you improve your life. Well, it really worked for me. I had a lot of people say, yeah, 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 we know all about your John Wayne stories. We've heard them all, and we don't get that you're really physically brave and that you're a tough guy. We get that. But what you don't get is that there's a softer side of you. There's a heart in you. And it's like you've nailed a piece of plywood over that heart. And we urge you to rip that piece of plywood off and discover who you are. And that's what I spent 2 or 3 years doing. But I was so
Yeah.
deep into it. And most people don't get that deep into going
Yeah.
down a wrong path like that. But I did. And like I say, then the State Department helped me out by sending me to the United Nations, where a whole new me addressed the problems of the world. And now I was addressing them with a real sense of wanting to do good.
Yeah.
And I realized that because I was smart and tough, I could use these qualities to do good in the world, to work for peace and justice instead of for wars and revolutions. So I did a lot of good stuff at the UN, including helping end apartheid, something which I'm very proud of.
Amazing.
So, for me, it took a long time. For other
Yeah.
people, maybe
Yeah.
not so long, but I'm a slow learner. And then at the end of the UN, when I realized I had to no longer could work for anybody else because my life then was totally set on doing good, and the State Department wasn't going to pay me to do that, so I quit after one episode. Oh God, I don't. Anyway, soon thereafter, I discovered the Giraffe Heroes Project and met and married Ann Medlock, and the story continues from there.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's where your passion for telling stories got even stronger, and it's evident, right? And it's definitely impactful. We started talking about it a little earlier in the podcast. It's very different from how most people try to influence others. So why does storytelling work better than telling people what to do?
because it honors their being. If you tell someone what to do, you're basically saying, hey, you haven't thought things through or you've made a mistake. And the other person has to say, yeah, I guess it was kind of, yeah. But you tell a story. All you're doing is creating a role model. Say, hey, look, here's someone else about your age, same gender, doesn't seem to be any smarter or better educated than you are. And yet he or she did this incredible thing and shifted the whole tenor of their company or their nation for that matter. People like
Yeah,
Nelson Mandela, for example, or their community, some brave mayor who's standing up for low income housing when a lot of other people don't want it because of the expense, civic expense. So, you find these people and they're role models, and that's what's important. The role
yeah,
models. And it's that's why role modeling and telling stories has been so effective for all these millennia because it is not offensive. It is not making people feel bad. It's saying, hey, here's someone else just like you. Is an interesting story. If the story keeps you on the edge of your seat, that's great. We're suggesting more than that. And that's why in telling more stories, I emphasize that I'm not an entertainer. I hate it when people call me an entertainer, but in a way I am. With that many followers, I guess I am. But that's not my point. My point is not to be an entertainer. My point is to be a storyteller, and in that way inspire people to do something extraordinary with their lives, something that benefits other people.
yeah. And like, what are people missing right now when it comes to impact?
I think they're missing a sense of meaning. I keep going back to that
Yeah,
like a dead record. I know that we've missed, but I think that's it. I mean, that's what they're missing. And if you don't have a sense of meaning, or if your sense of meaning, like for me, for example, was off in the wrong direction, physical adventure, not a good source of meaning. Or today, a lot of my friends is totally hooked on money and power and third quarter earnings. I think that's shallow. I think they're going to discover that's shallow at some point before they die. But discovering where real meaning comes from, some kind of service, some kind of giving back. Again, not being Mother Teresa, not being sackcloth and ashes, but doing a service, giving back right where you are. As a business person, as a neurosurgeon, as a barber, whatever you are, you can find some form of giving back.
obviously, we're heading into a world where a lot of automation is happening. Decisions, communication, even influence is being sourced to these bots, if you will, a lot of times. But courage still obviously has to come from humans. So, do you think it's becoming more or less important in this AI driven world?
Well, if you listen to at least two of my recent Badass Granddad episodes, you'll see that I am urging people to recognize that there's probably as much harm being done by AI as good. Again, this is your work. I don't mean to insult
Yeah.
you, but
No, 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 of course.
I'm so aware of the difficulties. Some of them are obvious, like the workforce repercussions of AI. Some of that is obvious. But the newest forms of AI, and it keeps getting more and more sophisticated. I don't need to tell you. I just read a whole article about AI creating emotional responses for people who are afraid to talk to their girlfriends, for example, or afraid to do stuff that where they have to bear their emotions. They'll ask a bot to do that, and bots are getting more and more skilled at not just replacing our brains. That's, doing large math sums or filing your taxes using AI, hey, that's fine. But writing a love letter using AI, that's not so fine.
Yeah.
Then there's the effect of AI on social media. I mean, the AI is behind an awful lot of the things that we don't like about social media, namely that bots are becoming more important than people. And now, these days, I at least can't tell a message or a picture written by a human from one written by an AI controlled bot. I mean, that's a real problem. It's also
Yeah.
affecting threatening our electoral process. But what really concerns me, and a lot of people are beginning to understand this, is that the sooner or later, and it's going to be sooner probably, The AI machines are going to understand they don't need us humans anymore.
Yeah.
And they're going to begin to organize among themselves. It's not just me. This is not just some aluminum hat conspiracy theory. It's already happening. And you probably know this.
Yeah.
That that the bots are assuming a degree of independence that most people thought they would never have. And I love the fact that in your LinkedIn descriptions of your work, you use the word guardrail several times. That's got to
Yeah.
happen. AI cannot go even for another year for sure without guardrails, and yet no one has the guts to create the guardrails. Certainly the inventors of AI, these 12 guys, 15 guys, whatever, who control it, they're very rich, very powerful men. They're all men, I guess. All they care about is becoming on top of that heap, and they seem to have no cognizance whatsoever about the long-term implications of AI. Obviously, you do. Reading everything about what you do in your work, you're very aware of that. And so I just applaud people like you because you have to have a lot of guts to stand up and say, AI is not all good, guys. It's not all good. There are some real dangers. And especially when the bots learn that they don't need us humans, we're in real problems then. I mean, what do we
Yeah.
do?
And look,
So right
it's harder to control the system. You can influence the system. Yeah, it's definitely a case where you introduce a lot more risk without humans. Absolutely. So if AI scales capability, then I guess character becomes the differentiator.
saying, but my God, there are a lot of people saying the opposite. You have a lot of opponents out there. People that
Yeah.
look at the latest thing that AI is doing, and not just filing your income taxes, it's doing all kinds of sophisticated things. Hey, it's lovely that AI can help your doctor diagnose your cancer. That's terrific. Or it's great if AI can help your company make a better, safer product. That's terrific. But in doing stuff that's a lot more sophisticated, that has to do with our judgment, our compassion, our feelings, man, there's got to be guardrails. There's got to be guardrails. And these 12 or 15 guys, man, someone's got to sit on them.
Yeah.
And Congress isn't going to do it, at least not this Congress. This president sure as hell isn't going to do it. The United Nations or global organizations are flailing. No one's doing it, and that's why I'm so thrilled. And I use that word. I am thrilled to see people like you who are brave enough to go online with these podcasts and say what you're saying, because
Yeah.
you have a lot of
Well,
detractors.
I've seen what just going along with things can result in. So be critical and think about things a little bit better. Ultimately, there's a lot of good that'll come with AI. A lot of things that humans don't want to do that it can do, but at the same time, there's a lot of negativity towards it, and there's a big growing school of thought to focus on where we can make it more practical and real and productive for us as humans. So
Yeah.
I really appreciate that perspective, John. Now, before we wrap up, John, where's the easiest way to get in touch with you for the viewers here if they want to reach out?
Oh, try my email, which is Graham, Graham, at giraffe, GIRAFFE .org, not com, org. It's amazing how many people can't spell giraffe, but it's got two F's.
Yeah, not surprising.
And that's one way. My website is simply my name, johngraham.org. Um, Tune in to Badass Granddad. It's fun, and it's only 3 minutes. Can't waste that much time, and it's fun. Hopefully, it's also compelling. The Giraffe Heroes Project, its URL is giraffe.org. 44 years of work there, plus these 2,000 stories, very inspiring stories. You want to get inspired, you'll find someone just like you sticking their necks out, and you can do the same. I've
I
written a
love
bunch
it.
of books. The last one, which has a lot of my stories, and we didn't get into the stories today, and that's fine because I'm used to telling those stories, and we talked about more important things, I think. But the stories are all in a book, a memoir whose title is Quest, Quest, Risk, uh, Adventure, and the Search for Meaning. That's enough. You put the rest of it in the notes.
Yeah, exactly. I'll throw it all down there and you could check it out. But I really appreciate it. It was different having you on and honestly needed. Cybersecurity is not immune to the requirement of culture. So in a world of noise and automation, the people who actually do the hard things still stand out. So I really appreciate you coming on and sharing your thoughts and stories here with us, John. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you. And I'm glad that it also gave you a bit of a platform because your views are incredibly important.
Thank you.